Okay, good morning, everyone. Last time near the end of the lecture, we talked about changes in quantity demanded. Changes. Let me what happened here? Okay, the changes in quantity demanded. Demanded there, right? Changes in quantity demanded means graphically, given the demand curve, and we're moving from one point to the other point on the same demand curve, right? So this is the movement along the demand curve, right? So if you're moving along the demand curve, then we call that there is a change in quantity demanded. So if you move this way, corresponding quantity demanded will increase, and if we're moving this way, there's going to be a decrease in quantity demanded there, right? And what causes this? This is caused by the changes in its own price, right? Change in price, right? So if price changes, then we're moving along the demand curve. And so if price goes up, then there's going to be a decrease in quantity demanded. If price goes down, then there's going to be an increase in the demand curve, quantity demanded, right? Okay. And on the other end, and when we say there is change in demand, so not quantity demand, the changes in demand, what that means graphically here is that the entire demand curve shifts either to the right or to the left. If it's the rightward shift, then we call that there is an increase in demand. And if there's a leftward shift, there is a decrease in demand there, right? Okay. So you can think of this as a change in demand like this here. So QP here. So suppose there is an increase in demand, right? So there's a rightward shift of the demand. Then what this says, even if the price hasn't changed, if this price is the same, and there's an increase in the quantity demanded, right, from here to there, right? So unlike here, if price changes, then we're moving along the demand curve. That is, there is going to be a decrease of the changes in the quantity demanded there, right? But here, even if the price hasn't changed, the quantity demanded has increased from here to there, right? And then that happens for every price level there, right? Here, same thing happens. So quantity demanded will increase for all price levels, right? So you can think of that, right? Or likewise, if there's a decrease in the demand, what that means is even if the price hasn't changed, there is a quantity decrease in the quantity demanded, like for every price level there, right? Okay. Now, we said that if there is a change in its own price, then there's going to be changes in quantity demanded. Now, let's talk about what causes the changes in demand. That is what causes the entire demand curve to shift either to the right or to the left, right? So let's look at that. Okay, so there's some of the factors. Let's look at factors causing changes in demand. There are many factors, but one obvious thing would be is the number of buyers. Remember, And this is obvious, right? So we talked about how we add the two demand curve, D1 and D2, to get the market demand, right? So we're adding them together. So there is a D1 plus D2. And we talked about that yesterday, right? So if there's one more buyer, and that is, so if there is one more buyer, this will push the demand curve to the right, right? And so if there are more buyers, there's going to be an increase in the demand. If there are less buyers, there's going to be a decrease. The thing you can think of this is there is an income. Right? Income obviously will change the demand, right? So change in demand. So income, as you can see, F income, but there are two types of effects and that income has on the demand. So if income goes up, suppose income goes up, and for normally you purchase more of the good, right? So the demand, if the demand goes up, then we call that this good is a normal good, okay? On the other hand, if income goes up, sometimes the demand for the good goes down. And if that happens, we call that good an inferior good. Right? It's inferior good. So, and mostly, normally that's what happens. If income, you have more money, then you purchase more of the good. But some product, and there is a decrease in demand as income goes up. So some of the examples you may think of this, like of an inferior good would be a generic product, like the Walmart has, was it great value, something like that. And the Sam's Club, it was like a Sam's Choice, like that. So as income goes up, you're going to decrease the consumption of those generic goods there, right? So you can think of that as an inferior good, right? And then another factor is people's preferences, buyers' preferences, and then taste changes over time, or the fashion fast there, right? So for example, for the past 10 to 15 years, there has been a tremendous increase in the demand for chicken. Yeah. Why do you think there has been a tremendous increase in the demand for chicken? Yeah, people's preference has changed there, right? Because of the health reasons, and they are looking for a white meat there, right? So there is an increase in the demand. And fashion, the iPhone, there's an increase in the cell phones, and then nowadays it's not even a fashion, it's like a necessity for everyone there, right? So preferences, taste always change. They will change the demand there, right? The next one would be number 4 here. So people's expectation, buyers' expectation. If people expect something, that will cause the buyer's behavior changing. For example, if like in winter times, if there's going to be a severe snowstorm coming, then you'll find like half of the population are brawler at Walmart, right? They're buying things up, right? So if they expect a severe snowstorm, there's going to be increase in demand for many of the products there, right? So buyers' expectation always affects the demand, right? So it's either decrease or increase in demand there. And now, let me clear this up, and then there's going to be another one, important one. This time, price of related goods, not its own good, related goods. So we're going to talk about two different types of related goods, and then the first one is called substitutes. So let me give you a definition of substitute. There are two goods are substitutes. If one good can be substituted or used for the other. Okay, so there are many examples of like this, but what would be a good example? The best example, maybe the classic example, is Pepsi and Coke, right? So, for most people, they can substitute this Pepsi for Coke and vice versa there, right? And then, so let's, and then second type of, this is the first type of the substitute, the related goods. And then let's look at price of one good changes, then how does that affect the demand for the other good, right? So for example, so let's look at, there's a Pepsi market. Here's a Pepsi market. And here's Q and P, Coke market there, right? So here's a demand there, right? Now, suppose currently the price of both Pepsi and Coke is like 25 cents a can. Okay, so 25 cents a can. And then for some reason, suppose Pepsi price has gone up considerably. Let's exaggerate it a bit, say $2. Okay. Then let's look at, well, before we look at how the increase in the price of Pepsi affects the demand for the other good, or Coke here, and let's look at its own effect there, right? So if price of Pepsi goes up, then there's going to be a decrease in the quantity demanded, right? So we're moving along the demand curve, right? So quantity demanded will decrease there, right? Okay, now if price of Pepsi goes up, what's going to happen to the demand for Coke? Yes, it will increase, right? Because some people, the Pepsi drinkers, they find this price, $2, is too expensive, and so they're going to consume Coke, right? Purchase Coke, right? Because they are a substitute, right? So that will increase in the demand for Coke, right? So what this says is, price of Pepsi goes up, then there is an increase in demand, for Coke, right? So that's the case when these two goods are substitutes, right? So if two goods are substitute, then the price of one good goes up, then the demand for the other good goes up there, right? Okay, so that way we can, this is one other way we can define the substitute. That is, if price of one good goes up and the demand for the other good goes up, then we call those two goods substitute, right? Okay. So the second type of the related goods is, say, B, is called the complementary goods, complements with E here. So here, two goods are complementary this complements if they are used together all the time at all times. So there are many examples of that: bread and butter, and peanut butter and jelly, and those kind of stuff. And then one example I often like is, this is kind of funny. This is the Corona. You don't want to hear this Corona thing anymore, but Corona Extra, right? Corona Extra and lime, right? So this Corona Extra is a beer, right? It's a brand of beer, right? That goes with lime all the time, right? You put lime in the piece of the lime, slice of lime, into the Corona Extra bottle, the beer, then you drink it, right? So they always go together. So there's this complements there, right? Okay, so let's look at how does the price of one good changes, and how does it affect the demand for the other good. So let's look at this. See here. QP. Suppose this is the lime market and this is the Corona Extra market there, right? Demand, right? Suppose that currently the lime price is 25 cents a piece, and for some reason, so say severe drought down in Florida, and causes the price of lime to go up to $3 there, right? Then for lime market, there's going to be a tremendous decrease in the quantity demanding, right? And that's expected movement along the demand curve. But now, if price of lime went up, then what's going to happen to the demand for Corona Extra? Yes, this time there's going to be a decrease in the demand for Corona Extra because these two goods are complements. They are consumed together. Then if this is, some people are not willing to pay for $3, then there is going to be a corresponding decrease in the demand for Corona Extra, right? So this time, so when these two goods are complement and price of lime goes up, then this time the demand for Corona Extra went down, right? So this is what happened when two goods are complement. That is, if price of one good goes up and demand for the other good goes down, then we call these two goods complement, right? So this is exactly opposite here, right? So here, for the substitute case, a good case, if price of one good goes up, then there is an increase in the demand for the other good. And this one price of one good goes up, then there is a decrease in the demand for the other good, right? So, and yeah, these are some of the factors causing changes in demand there, right? And there are more, but I think that should be enough there, right? Okay, so now let's look at this in some numerical example. Let's look at this as an example. So what we did so far was like Q of demand for demand depends on its own price. Now, suppose we're looking at the demand for good X there, right? Demand for good X depends on its own price, right? So before we introduce some other factors that cause the demand change, and we looked at this there, right? But now we're adding more variables that affect the demand. So demand for good X, say, depends on not only on its price, but also other factors, say income, and some other goods price, say price of good Y, etc., etc., right? So like that. That's what we're doing. So we're putting other variables or other factors that affect the demand for good X there, right? So one example here. Some example here. Suppose we have the demand curve for good X like this. PX and income, and it depends on the three factors: its own price and income and the price of other related good Y, okay? And in the following way, say 100 minus 2px plus 0.1 times m minus 4 times py. Okay, now with this demand function here, can you tell the good X is normal good or inferior good? Is good X normal or inferior good? So to find whether a good is a normal or inferior, what you need to do is you need to see the effects of changes in the income. If income goes up, then the demand goes up, then we call that good normal. If income goes up, but the demand for the good goes down, then we call that good inferior, right? So we have to look at the effects of changes in income there, right? That is, if this goes up, what's going to happen to this? So QX. Yes, it will increase, right? Because the coefficient in front of the income is 0.1, which is positive there, right? So if this goes up, then QX will go up, right? So in fact, you can even say even further. So $1 increase in income will increase 1/10 unit of good X there, right? The demand for good X there, right? So this is, and good X is normal good because as income goes up and the demand for the good goes up there, right? Okay. Now, second question you can think of is, what kind of relationship between good X and good Y? And so that is our good X and good Y substitutes or complements. And how can you tell? To see that, you have to look at the effects of changes in the price of one good on the demand for the other good, right? So if price of Y goes up, then what's going to happen to the demand for good X? Yes, it will go down because there's a negative sign in front, right? Anyway, so here. So what are the relationship? If price of Pepsi goes up, then the demand for Coke goes down. No, that doesn't make sense, right? So this time, if price of lime goes up, then the demand for Corona Extra goes down, right? So that makes sense, right? So they are complements, right? They are complements. They are complements because then price of Y goes up as price of Y goes up and the demand for good X goes down, right? So they are complementary goods there, right? Okay. So you'll see, you'll find the exercise problem in the problem set there, okay? Okay, now, let's continue now, and with, let's go back to the differences between changes in quantity demanded and the changes in the demand there, right? Okay. Okay, now let's see. Let me see. Okay, now, so there is a difference between changes in quantity demanded versus changes in demand. So here. So this is movement along the demand curve, right? So movement along the demand curve, and then this one, so we're moving along the demand curve here. And this one is we're shifting the entire demand, right? So there's an increase in demand or decrease in the demand, right? So this is, okay, now, here's a policy, government policy examples there, right? And some policy examples, policy related, policy related examples there. Yeah. Okay. So many governments in the world, and they want to discourage their people smoke less. So, cigarette is really bad for your health. So they want to reduce the consumption of the cigarettes, right? And then, so there are at least two different ways of doing it. The first one is through taxes, yes. Because if you increase the tax on the cigarettes, then the price will go up, right? If price goes up, then the people's purchasing behavior will be changing. And so the first, the graphically, it's like this. So the price was here before tax here, and now after tax, suppose the price went up to PT. Then what's going to happen to the quantity demanded? Demanded will decrease, right? So that is, we're moving along the demand curve, right? So this policy, tax policy, to reduce the consumption of the cigarettes is intended, we're moving along the demand curve, right? But the other way of achieving similar thing would be through, say, education. If you remember, I'm pretty sure some of you have this education class in your elementary school, and known as, I believe it's called the CARE, I think, DARE, it's called the DARE, DARE program. This is the education program. It's a drug and alcohol reduction education program or something like that, their program. So I remember when my sons, they're all grown up now, but when they're in elementary school, I remember the local police, the policemen visit schools, and then they provide some booklet, and then they do some coloring, and then and they are educating these little students about the dangers of the drugs and alcohols and the cigarettes and stuff like that, right? So the purpose of this education, like their program, is that through education they want to reduce or decrease the demand stuff, right? So their education program is entire demand curve is designed to intend to reduce or to decrease the whole demand function instead of movement along the demand, like here through taxes there, right? So you can think of this two different types of policies that are trying to achieve the same thing, right? They're trying to reduce the consumption of the cigarettes there, right? Okay, now I think that's so that will conclude that will conclude the demand section. We'll come back to this demand later. For now, but we're going to stop here for demand.